next?
Next item is the release of the public portions of the executive session minutes. So on an annual basis, we go back and we look at the what executive session minutes have been taken. And then we go
that?
Did you have that?
Yeah, I got mine going too.
Did you pass it on to someone?
Yeah, I left my message.
Did you get?
Do you want to see mine?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Mine says,
Yes, there we go.
mine says it's coming.
Ready.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Does anyone have them? Okay, so in order to comply with the open meeting laws, we're required to do this, and actually we've been going through this process before some of these laws were enacted. Back in 1997, the members had delegated the general manager to review the minutes and to approve the appropriate portions for release. So at this point, this is what we have. There are some exceptions to how these fall under, if it's pending or anticipated litigation matters, whether it's pending or anticipated collective bargaining negotiations, pending or anticipated negotiations for purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, pending or anticipated contract negotiations with non-union personnel, pending or anticipated investigations of criminal or criminal misconduct, or considerations of filing of criminal complaints, information protected from disclosure under the public Massachusetts Public Records Law, discussions protected by attorney-client privilege, and security matters. So in that regard, for last year, we released the minutes through 2017. So at this point, for minutes through 2018, the portions of the executive session minutes now being released to the public include those pertaining to the authority's negotiations for new collective bargaining agreements and amendments to its current collective bargaining agreements with Teamsters Local Union 59, governing the terms and conditions of employment for the authority's maintenance employees. The authority's renewal of a lease with Prime Properties Limited Partnership for property located at 509 Falmouth Road, Mashpee. The authority's potential acquisition of property owned by Joseph Arno located at 31 Easy Street in Nantucket, with redaction of the appraised value of the property pursuant to Mass General Law. The authority's potential exercise of an option to renew its lease of 3.55 acres of land at the Martins Vineyard Airport. The authority's potential litigation with Sinesco Marine LLC with redactions for materials protected by attorney-client privilege and confidential disclosures and agreements made in mediation. The authority's renewal of a lease with Gary Wing as trustee of the Woodland Trusts in G&B Realty Trust for property located at 1251 Route 28, Katomet. And the authority's strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, including former treasurer Gerard J. Murphy.
Any questions on that? Would you like to vote?
No votes required, it's just for information purposes. The next thing, if I may, that should fall into this in this category. It's a late edition that just came up at the end of the week after the packets were done. Mark Rosen, if he could, to assist on this, but essentially, there's an opportunity to apply for some grants for Massachusetts MassDOT low discretionary grant application, in which the Vineyard Transit Authority, the Nantucket Transit Authority, and the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority are looking to partner on this along with us. in applying for some, what's considered as a low or no emission program, a low-no program. This notice was put out back in March for funding opportunities, so Mark, if you want to come up and you can add to this. So basically what we're looking for is to see if we can get if there's opportunities to get some grants and work with these other agencies in the region to have standardize some of the fleets.
So Andrew reached out to us, Andrew Graham from the Vineyard Transit Authority, and asked if we'd like to partner with them and the other regional RTAs to apply for this grant through MassDOT, as well as participating in a bid for 40-foot electric buses. So with your, and she also asked if you could write a letter for support along with some other people in the Commonwealth supporting this project. She's already successfully received grant money in this program, so we're really coattailing on her expertise in this industry of getting the grant money. I think it would be a good project, so we're looking for the delta between the cost of a diesel bus and an electric bus, as well as the infrastructure cost for the charging units. So.
Any questions? Any further?
So, and again, it's a letter to support a grant application, so I felt that this was something that is supposed to be coming from me as the general manager. I thought it should be coming from the board on this, and that's why it's a late addition to the program, but we don't have the luxury of waiting on this.
So you want to vote?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I accept the motion that we file an application for a grant from the North Virginia Transit Authority and who else?
It's in conjunction with the Vineyard Transit Authority, the Untitled Transit Authority, and the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority. So the four organizations would be applying.
Okay. May I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
I think it's a wonderful idea. Thanks.
Who had it? Thank you.
If I may, on the side note, we have a demo bus coming in July 8th through the 17th from another vendor to try out during the summer months, because we did try borrow the vineyards in the winter. So we're going to be rolling that out this July. And one correction, that the Island Home will be out starting January 10th through March 30th.
This other bus, electric as well?
Yes, it's from a company called Patera.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Thank you.
Apologize for the lateness. Heading into procurement, the first item we have is change order number 32 with Jay Cashman seeking the board to authorize the general manager to approve change order number 32 as part of contract number 16-2017 with Jay Cashman, Inc. This change order is required because of the obstruction that they had when they were driving the 96-inch number 8 monopile. The obstruction not only damaged the monopile, but also damaged the diesel hammer. They had to remove the damaged portion of the monopile, and they drove it to refusal. Now we're also, the engineering firm is also looking at what needs to be done to now support that monopile, because it's not driven to the expected depth that it needs to be done. But the additional cost for this, just from the Cashman standpoint, is $168,450.57. So we're asking that the members vote to authorize the general manager to execute change order number 32 for contract number 16-2017 with Solar Reconstruction Waterside with J. Cashman, Inc. The total cost of $168,450.57.
Questions?
Yes. I know, I see somebody in our organization has reviewed that request with the contract, and I don't understand why that isn't a cost of doing business for Cashman. That's something that they would have considered that they might incur when they bid.
So when we structured the marine contract, part of this was that because not knowing what was underneath the pier where the building was, we weren't able to do any drillings or probing beforehand where the building was. That the way that the contract was structured was that there's a certain portion of it that ends up being the contractor's requirement, that it's just something that falls within their purview, and anything beyond that ends up being a cost that we would be incurring. The idea being at the time was that we did it like that so that way we didn't want them to, potential bidders to be inflating their contract where it may not be necessary. It may not have been structured there, so therefore we wouldn't have had that cost. But if they had to build something into their contract beforehand, not knowing, we would have potentially gotten higher initial bids. So we structured this that way to be done on a change order basis for these type of issues.
Is that something that was insurable for us?
Not anything that I believe we looked into.
Bob, so what Bob is referring to, so the contract is structured so that any obstructions within 10 feet of underground is on their dump, okay? But anything below that, it's hard to foresee, so they assume they can get it in, and the specs clearly say that if they have to restrike or they have to pull the pile out, it's a change order. So it's hard to foresee what pile driving is. It's hocus pocus. It's hard to foresee what you're going to run into. 60 feet down or 80 feet down. So it's just the way it is.
I understand. I'm just concerned with $500,000 worth of change
I
orders.
understand.
I mean, that's in a year that we're losing money.
Yeah.
Now, this price includes the installation.
No, it does not include the repair to that part. So it is
And we got
We'll
another
get-
change order.
probably. We're going to drive two more 42-inch piles and back it up. So it's going to be a tripod. Instead of a monopile, it's going to be 3 piles. The pipe is due this week. In fact, I think I saw it coming in, driving out to New Bedford this morning. So the pipe is here. The fix should go into place within the next week or 2.
So we can anticipate there's going to be another bill
Yes.
of approximately.
I don't have the numbers, Bob. I can't guess right now.
I understand.
The other issue is that they're going to be driving these 42-inch piles adjacent to the monopile, which ends up hitting the ledge. So the hope is that we're able to get beyond the ledge that's there to be able to get these piles in. So.
What are the change orders total year to date? I mean, a project to date.
I don't have an invoice in handy, Bob. Do you have one?
What was that?
No, I wanted
What's
to
the
know
total change order?
what the total change orders were on this project
Project.
to date.
So to date, including the ones that are before the board for approval, it's about $2.2 million in change orders.
2.2 million? And what have our payments been year to date, do you know, on the project?
Yeah, well, it's a $43 million contract. I want to say we're somewhere in the $15 million range, but I'll have to double check on that.
So we're 15 out of the 43? And on that 15, we got, does that include the 2.2?
No, the 43 is in addition, so the contract right now stands at $45,443,000 if these change orders are approved. And this portion of it, from a construction standpoint, because of the pier work that needed to be, to be removed and everything, we were not as, it didn't lend itself to be doing as much probing of that area. We anticipated that this portion of it would be the most difficult portion of of the contract from a construction standpoint. Once we get to the southern slip, we're aware of that there's a ledge there as well, so I think there's a little different technique that could be taking place down there. But,
So it's about 5% on a contract that's only a third of the way through, right? Yes. I mean, I think it's something that we really need to watch like a hawk.
So when the budget was approved for the marine portion of it, it included the contingency, I want to say somewhere in the $5 million range, so.
We budgeted for $5 million of change orders, is that what you're saying?
I thought it was 4.
It was somewhere between, I thought it was between 4.5 and 5, but somewhere in that range.
The complexity of some of these construction projects, that's not necessarily unusual. Mark?
No, I was going to mention the contingency funds, but also my understanding is as we go farther south, there's more ledge, more rock. So what's going to be different going farther south as we continue construction?
So what we've done from an engineering standpoint, we know the new slip 1, which is slip 2 currently,
The southern slip.
the most southern slip is, we're not using monopiles for the head dolphins, we're using the smaller piles because we didn't anticipate being able to get them in. Now, we have done a lot of probing in that area down to 80 feet, and we moved monopiles in this, so that we think we can get them in. Wherever we do have monopiles, we think we can get them in at least to 80 feet. It came back in the design and now they want 100 feet down, but 80 feet would be good. So we have done some investigation in that area. We've changed the head dolphins in that slip to 18-inch, maybe 20-inch piles instead of monopiles. So we're trying to, we're doing the best we can to avoid problems like this. But even with 18-inch piles, if they have to drive them and they don't get them to depth, they'll pull them and they'll be able to move them. The problem with monopiles, you can't move 8 feet and still be in the same place,
Further questions? If not, I accept the motion to approve the change order.
So moved.
Let's move.
I will second that.
Second, is there further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I abstain.
You abstain? Okay. Moving on.
So next item is to authorize the general manager to approve change order number 33 as part of contract 16-2017. With Jay Cashman, this change order is required because of the work that was associated with the sheet pile bulkhead installation. At the slip 3 transfer bridge location, as you may recall, the sheet piles had to be removed and realigned 1 foot west of the original design elevation in order to avoid obstructions. Later, while they were driving the head dolphins monopile, the bulkhead shifted nearly 1 foot in certain locations because of the vibrations of the vibratory hammer caused the effect called liquefaction of the soil. This required us Cashman to excavate the dead man's wall and tie rods nearly 80 feet of the bulkhead in order to address the situation. And then once that work was completed, then to again backfill the area with crushed stones. The total cost for this additional work was $314,862.41. So we're seeking that the members vote to authorize the general manager to execute contract change order number 33 for contract 16-2017 with soil reconstruction waterside with Jay Cashman for a total contract price of $314,862.41.
I'll move it with a question.
The item has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Second. Is there discussion?
I just want to know, it shifted so it wasn't square. Is it square now? Were they able to pull it
It's
back?
not completely square, but it's in much better shape than it was. You can't recover how far out it shifted.
Right.
But we were able to take the tensions off the tie rods, and so we feel we have a solid bulkhead. It's just, you know, the toe is different than the, it's still shifting out, but we were able to get them at least. What happened is it not only shifted out, it went down as well. We were able to get them back to the same height. We can pull it back up, but we couldn't pull it in.
So it's not going to be a future issue.
No, it shouldn't be a future issue. Now, you have to realize this happened, this is my February nightmare. This happened in two phases. First phase, once we got past about where the transfer bridge was, we ran into something solid around 28 feet down. So the engineers decided, well, we'll move the line out, the bulkhead line out west by a foot, so that we could, and we figured we could avoid it. We did that, okay? We completed that and rounded the corner, but that was a change order. We had to pull piles out. At where the transfer bridge is, the piles went out on an angle to that new location, went around the corner, and then we came back and drove the monopiles, the heads off the monopiles, and then we had the liquefaction event. So, you know, it was like, and so we had to uncover everything associated with the bulkhead, realign at least the elevation of the bulkhead, and then detension the tie rods and reconnect them. It's a lot of rework.
More?
Does the 2.2 million in change orders, does that include the changes to the architectural costs for redesigning the building?
No, that's separate.
How much
Separate.
is that?
So some of this is different. So with the design and engineering contract, we also included the construction management as change orders when we did that contract on a yearly basis. So you may recall last month you approved just under 1.1 million in change orders for those design services. So right now the contract for this is just over $10 million. It originally started as a $5 million contract, but
That's just the building.
well, that's for the entire project. The building portion of it, I don't have that breakout with me. So, but yes, we have incurred change orders, and I think we've already, we're probably approaching about $500,000 in change orders for changes in the terminal building itself.
Any further questions?
I have one. So the use of the vibratory hammer, which then created everything. So I understand the whole thing about being the ledge being so low, and also your point about if we don't take some assumption of risk in this, then the bids are going to be, you know, compensating for that. So I totally get that. So in terms of the equipment that was used, and then we had to pay for the repair of that equipment, we had to pay for the repair of the resulting, you know, move out of the edge of the bulkhead and that type of thing. Is there any question about whether that vibratory hammer, whether it made sense to use it in that setting, particularly given all the effects?
So I think what the plan then was to use the diesel hammer to drive all the monopiles. What had happened was that the diesel hammer had broken. The diesel hammer had broken when they were working on monopile number 8, so they ended up switching to the vibratory hammer. So I think the original plan would have been that would have been those head dolphin ones would have been driven by the diesel hammer instead. So that would have a different effect in the vibrations.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's part of it. They were planning on using just the diesel hammer, but when we ran into number 8, and the problem with number 8, we needed to pull the pile out to see what it was, and you can't do that with a diesel hammer. We needed a vibratory hammer to do that. So we got this large vibratory hammer to do that. There was some benefit because with the diesel hammer, they were planning on setting up false wood for each pile, and that proved to be difficult for monopiles because once the false wood wasn't holding the pile in place, because when you hit this big pipe, it just pushes everything out of its way. The benefit of the diesel hammer is we were able to put it in, vibrate the future piles in place without the false wood. So it's you know, we have guidelines now on how far, how much vibration and how fast the pile is going in. If it stops, we stop. We have some engineering parameters now to try to prevent this in the future.
Further questions? Okay, the motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
By myself. Any abstaining? Unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, continuing on, I would like to request the members authorize the general manager to award contract number 01-2019, dry docking overhaul services for the Vineyard to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder, which is Thames Shipyard and Repair Company of New London, Connecticut, for a total contract price of $589,330. The Martha's Vineyard is scheduled to enter shipyard availability from September 9th, 2019 to October 20th, 2019 to undergo a required Coast Guard hull exam, rudder, pellet, shaft inspections, and maintenance of the bow thruster, painting of the ship's exterior from the keel to the guard, and replacement of five 01 deck side shell weather-tight doors, and installation of 4 new line handling doors and numerous other improvements. It was sent out to 10 shipyards. We had 1 responsive bid. So we would like to request that the members authorize the general manager to award contract 01-2019, dry docking overhaul services for the MV Martha's Vineyard to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder, Thames Shipyard and Repair Company of New London, Connecticut, at a total contract price of $589,330. I should point out that this contract is coming in about $300,000, just not quite $300,000 below what our budget estimate had been for this.
Music to our ears.
We can find a use for that money, I think.
May I have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve this.
Second?
Second is a discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, then one more. So we
Make up
have,
one question first. We've got there are really only 2 shipyards in the area that we're dealing with. Most of the ones on this bidding list that were sent out are all over the countryside.
There are only
Sedesco,
two shipyards north of New York that can do our work. That's your question?
Yeah. That's about it? These 2?
Yes.
Thank you. Puts us in a bind sometimes.
Well, there are other shipyards, such as up in Boston, but their grading dock is so large, it doesn't make economic sense for them to try to dig a small ferry in there. For 2 reasons: it costs too much to pump out the water in it, electrical. But if they were to have us in there and another large vessel were to come for an emergency repair, they wouldn't be able to take that work, and that could be millions of dollars versus our small dry dock.
Gotcha. Thank you.
and I think part of this is as we move forward with the HMS and positions there is, if we're able to be getting these bids out even sooner, we may find that there may be more of an appetite from other yards that are further south to be bidding on these projects. So.
Good.
So next we have a request for the members to authorize the general manager to execute a contract with DHK Architects to provide architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection design services for a new maintenance and office building at the authority's current Falmouth maintenance facility located at 52 Bernard St. Jean Drive in East Falmouth at a price of $145,554. So we purchased the facility back in 2012, and at the time we purchased that facility, we anticipated being a bus vehicle maintenance shop. Once we had a chance to have it evaluated by our architectural firm as well as the state building inspectors, determined that that building, the modifications to that building to do such would be just too expensive for it. So we entered into a long-term lease at a property down the road to perform our bus vehicle maintenance. So at the time, we were looking at the Woods Hole Terminal project, and we would have to be taking the maintenance support functions that previously been housed in that building, as well as the warehouse on Thomas B. Landis, and we transitioned those shops up to the Falmouth maintenance facility. But to date, although the building is capable of housing a majority of the trades, it's not adequate for it to segregate those trades. It's not adequate for storage within the building. In fact, we've taken temporary measures that we've added storage with the use of shipping containers, some of which have actually been modified to add a workspace, so we have to have them have a split air unit installed. Some of it is because of the materials that we're storing in there need to be kept in a certain temperature range, and other is that because it's actually small shops that have been set up in some of them. So the 2019 capital budget that we presented to the board earlier this year had included a contingency in the amount of $3 million for construction of a new maintenance and office building at that site. This cost estimate that we had done was based on using the price that we paid for the pre-engineered building located at Fairhaven, the newest one at our Fairhaven facility, which was 4 years ago. So the office space at Palmer Avenue we now find is limited and insufficient to house some of the additional positions that the HMS has recommended that we have. So to address the situation, we're looking to transition the engineering and maintenance department offices to be relocated to the second floor of a new building at the Falmouth maintenance facility. So the updated cost construction estimate for the building is approximately $4.5 million. We have been recipients of grants through the Federal Highway Administration, the Ferry Boat Formula Grant Program, in which we have just under $3.6 million available in funds right now. And in fact, those funds need to be obligated by September 30th. Otherwise, those funds end up going back into the pool and are reallocated to other ferry operators. So we need to utilize those funds, or we're going to lose them. The funds, the grants do require a 20% match, so we're just under $900,000 that we need to match. So the estimate that we have right now for a building, including putting offices in a portion of that building for the maintenance department, it ends up being sufficient to meet that difference between the 3.6 million in grants and the 900,000 that we'd have to supply as matching funds. We'd be able to do that for this building. So we're requesting that the members authorize the general manager to execute a contract with DHK Architects to provide the architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection design services for a new maintenance and office building at the current Falmouth maintenance facility, 52 Bernard St. Jean, East Falmouth, in the amount of $145,554. That's so that way they can prepare construction documents, so that way we can get this bid and bring it back to the board for.
Okay, did I get a motion?
I have a question. Can the 3.6 grant be used for anything else at all?
What
else could it be used for?
It can't be used for operational expense. It has to be used for capital expenses, and has to be specific to the operation. So for instance, we can't use it for buses and things like that. We could use it for instance, if we were looking at doing some repowering of changing out generators on vessels and things like that, we could use it for that. But we've already applied for grant applications to do just that for the generators.
Applied for, but we haven't received them yet.
We haven't been, it hasn't been awarded, so at this point.
Can this be deferred? Can this decision on this be deferred in your professional opinion?
At this point, all we're looking for is to get the design and the bidding documents prepared, so that way we can go out. Otherwise, again, we need to, working backwards, we have to have it obligated by the end of September. The plan would be to have the bids come in July, so that way we get awarded either at the July meeting or the August meeting. So that way we're committed, as long as, we just have to be obligated in order to receive the funds. And otherwise, these funds would go back into the pool, and we would not be eligible to reapply for those funds.
So what of our projects could this $3.6 million be used for in lieu of this?
In lieu of that, we're looking, the possibility would be whether we'd be able to, for instance, over in Nantucket, the passenger shelter areas by the high-speed slip, whether we could use it for that. Same thing in Hyannis, to be able to extend that shelter over by the high-speed service. But the other uses we could use.
Can it be any dry dock stuff? Can it be
It cannot be used for any of the dry dock. It's not for very operational expenses.
generators again?
That would be a capital improvement, so we'd have to for instance, with rebuilding the engines on the Iron, that would not be something that would be considered eligible for this project, because it's an operating expense, it's not a capital expense. So,
How about a new boat? Just out of curiosity.
well, the original intent was that we were taking these funds and we were holding them aside, but the idea was that we would then use them towards the funding of the terminal building project in Woods Hole. But it turns out that unlike the previous grant program, there's a 3-year window that you have to use these funds by. And so at this point, we're at risk of losing this $3.6 million in funds.
How about a new boat, like the design of a new boat? Can it be used for that?
It could be, but you'd have to have again a commitment for that. We have to, whether it's the design or acquisition of a new vessel, that would be an eligible application for this.
Okay,
I have a couple short questions.
I have first.
Pardon me?
I have my first, yeah.
First of all, thank you. It's a very good grant. Is this the property that's connected to Thomas P. Landers?
Yes, it's connected to, there's a service road that we have going from the parking lot there through our facility. There's restrictions on how much space can be cleared. That property is by and large already cleared. The location of it, when we have the car was able to get the.
No, I've walked it. I just want to make sure I'm talking about the right piece of property. Are we thinking about moving the bus maintenance back there?
No, this is just before the shop buildings. If you go up there now, we have, I think upwards of 17 or 18 shipping containers that we have spread out over the property, containing different supply items, and also, as I said, some of these shops. So we're looking at trying to consolidate those into a building, and also add some of the office space. We have the facilities manager for that he's in the administration offices, and he spends most of his time going up to that facility anyway. So why not have him, stage there and things like that. So.
All right. Are we going to build something similar to what we built in Fairhaven?
That would be the idea, except for there was the second floor of it, instead of that large open bay that we have in Fairhaven, there'd be a second floor, which we'd be able to have some offices. Some of them would be used as office space, some of them would just be used as a warehouse storage space.
Thank you.
Does this fit within the, purview of technology park, and are any variances going to be required to do any of this?
It should fit within, we do need to touch base with Falmouth EDIC on this, but as I said, the land is already cleared. We're not looking at, we already have the appropriate coverage for the land, so in terms of keeping it in its native state. So this is an area that's already been cleared. It is already cleared and is in use. We're just repurpose it with the buildings.
I think as little impact where we have to ask for special permission for anything would be good for Falmouth, from Falmouth's perspective.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that it's again, we just want to touch base with them to inform them what we're doing, but I think it's, my understanding is that it's actually something that's capable of being done based on our current conditions.
Any further questions? Can I accept the motion?
I'll move it.
Moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second moved and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Huh?
I'm opposed.
You opposed, one opposed. Okay. Next.
That takes care of procurement, so we're on to Golden.
Do we have any ordinances or any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, I don't see any items not reasonably anticipated. So I'll accept a public comment. Are there those who wish to speak? Please. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Holstein from Falmouth,
Yes.
and as you know, I'm part of a citizens task force aimed at diverting traffic north of the bridges. And my question is about how you imagine, we were here last week on the 8th for a great meeting with the South Coast Rail people, and the discussion about the connectivity of all the communities from Boston.
I'm sorry, sir, I cannot hear you. Can you come forward a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Glad you don't.
Don't mean to put you on stage.
Oh, no, that's okay. Between not hearing and hearing aids.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna give you my
Anyway,
seat.
oh, that's all right. That's all right. I can lean over. I'm asking a question about how you imagine your participation in the ferry to rail connectivity. The conversation, the conference last week, which occurred here in Bedford, with the presentation of the initial phase of the South Coast Rail, with phase 1 scheduled to be completed in 2022, with the completion of 5 terminals, 2 of which are in New Bedford. A north terminal just to the east side of 140 up by the airport, and the second Wales Tooth terminal right downtown. And so that conversation, or the discussion, led to ways of connecting communities, improving everything, economic development, qualities of life, and questions about how to incorporate the island communities in this flow of, and so that's my question. How do you imagine your participation in a ferry to rail connection in the future? The terminals are designed. They have a target completion date. So how do you see yourselves pulling the islands together and connecting them to the South Coast Rail and incorporating these communities as a regional transportation system? That's the question.
Well,
How you imagine the future?
I would not want to be shooting from the hip here. This is the first I've heard of it.
Oh, I know.
Huh?
Yeah. You have that,
It's a good question. It falls into the route of opening up our route to the islands, to New Bedford. We do have transportation going from New Bedford to the islands right now, private carrier. And that would be obviously the first option. You would not want to compete with them. But we license private carriers because we don't have to carry every passenger. We just have to see the transportation needs are met. And I think there's a conversation that probably would be helpful to you to speak to the carrier and, for his and their thoughts about, connecting with it. That's a big question.
That's a good question, though, isn't it? South Coast Rail's been at this for quite a while now,
It's a
so.
fair question, but I've never heard it before. But I think the answer is right now that we do have transportation from New Bedford to the island.
And is that pretty much how you imagine the future, or will at least the teachers already
I
work
think,
on imagining?
I think things like this are market driven. I think things like this are market driven. If there's a need to fill a market, either the authority or private carriers will undoubtedly try to fill it. But if there's no need, if there's no market, it won't. And when the carrier, which is C Street, came in first, that they came and made a proposal to us to have 2 boats year-round. After the first year, they realized there was no market for 2 boats year-round. Then they ran the other boat year-round, and they realized there was no market for boats for year-round. And so now they do it seasonal, as when the high demand is. So your demand is going to be the answer. If you foresee a lot of traffic coming down here, and if demand, increases, then I think they will be, they'd love to be. They've already tried to do it year-round, and I think they'd be wide open to that type of discussion. But other than that, that's as close as I can get without, looking at the whole.
So it's reasonable for us to talk with C Street and see what sort of proactive conversation might happen with a future vision of rail and connecting the island communities with the communities along that rail line.
But I think you doing, your thought process, you've got to think of a market. If there's no market, there's no sense of, spending the money for transportation. So it's going to be, I'm sure, a big challenge to even get the rail here and what they see as a market. And if they're bringing people to New Bedford, people certainly, this is a destination for a lot.
Oh, it is, yes. And they've been underway for quite a while. So New Bedford and all the towns along the way have been participating. The South Coast Rail has been, planning this for a good many years now. So, and New Bedford's quite enthusiastic about obviously
It's
the rail.
a great destination for them. And to move, over to the islands, if that's what they're trying to do, the market will show itself.
Okay, good. Well, thanks. So this
Do these come out of South Station? In Boston?
yes, the South Station down through Marlborough and down through Brockton, Taunton, and hard question waiting for the market. At least the towns along the way were all here last week, representatives of all the towns, and participating in discussing the changes in workforce and the economic development of each town, Rockland, Taunton, along the way, and New Bedford, and trying to imagine how to facilitate improved economic development and improve quality of life up to New Bedford, and now imagining trying to work as a community with the islands. And so it takes some head scratching because one can wait for the market, and I understand that. One can also imagine a future which is different than the one that's now. And so I hear what you're saying. I don't think I totally agree. I think I hear you're saying that we will be reactive. But I think it's possible to imagine a future that works well, and imagine the scenarios as the South Coast Rail is really doing. So anyway, that's my general question, so thanks.
The rail has gone something like this. It went away. It went away when you had, individual trucking, and they, it cost so much money to put freight and stuff on the rail. The rail used to go down.
Yeah.
In Falmouth, the rail went down in Hyannis at one time. And as a side note, the first boat that went into that ferry dock there was the Island Pump.
Mm-hmm. It was, yes.
And that, is the way it's been. To resurrect it,
Well, yeah, I don't think that's
Good
going to
luck.
happen, so, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my question on the table.
well, it's a
so
good
thanks.
question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
There are copies there for everyone. The Steamship Authority asked for feedback on the Woods Hole Terminal construction project and especially building position and
Would you identify
Design.
yourself for the record, please?
Matt from Woods Hole. And you're aware of the now over 1,000 petitioner statement, and that petition number, that signature number is continuing to grow despite the alternative designs. We wanted to share with you, this is on behalf of our Citizens Task Force, the following three questions. The first is, how has such a large-scale project been undertaken without consideration of long-term trends within a regional transportation context and overall long-term planning on the part of the Steamship Authority? And I would add, it's discouraging not to see progress on the new hire for the planner that we've read about in the HMS consulting report, despite other hires which seem great. That piece seems to be entirely missing today. The second question is the Steamship Authority being practical in the first place by aiming to build a terminal building that is planned to last 50 years when new and advanced building and other technological solutions are bound to emerge over that same 50-year period. And the Steamship Authority inevitably is going to be left with a 2019 or later building through the year 2069. One worries to what extent might this become some form of white elephant if technology is changing all around you. And in this regard, I think about electronic ticketing, which has been discussed so much, including at the public presentations. And then finally, we've heard about this already today. Is it wise for the Steamship Authority to construct such a large and expensive terminal building in the environmental and dynamic location of Woods Hole Terminal, where sea level rise, that is so close to the water of Woods Hole Terminal, where sea level rise, frequency of storms, and velocity zones are expected to be so much different over the coming 50 years, and those new conditions might require an entirely different type of terminal building and location. So those were our three questions that are part of this 10-page statement from our citizens. feedback from our citizens task force.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? If not, I would put something to read here. I would take a motion to go into executive session, and I will read follow to that. I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss and approve the minutes of the authority's meeting in executive session on January 22nd, 2015. To consider the purchase, exchange, lease, and value of real property, and to discuss the authority's strategy with respect to collective bargaining matters, because a public discussion of these matters may have a detrimental effect on the authority's negotiating and bargaining positions. These matters include litigation in RE, reference to the Woods Hole Martha's Vineyard Nantucket Steamship Authority, civil action number 17-CV-12437-NMG in the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. The potential for litigation with DDS Industries, Inc. and G&R Construction, Inc. and/or Berkeley Insurance Companies regarding contract number 16-2016, construction of new administrative offices. Potential for lease or acquisition of these property, and negotiation with SEIU Local 888 for the new collective bargaining agreement for the authority's reservation clerks and other customer service department employees. The public disclosure of any information with respect to these matters would compromise the purpose for which the executive session is being called. After the conclusion of the executive sessions, we will not reconvene in public. Again, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If I may, I believe those minutes should be the March 19th minutes, not the February 19th. There may be a typo on that page.
this said January.
Okay, it should be March 19th.
The March 19th minutes. Okay, may I have a motion to this effect?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
And this will be a roll call vote, starting with
Randy, aye.
Catherine Wilson. Aye.
Jones, aye.
Amber, aye.
Aye.
She said aye.
What did you say? Aye.
I did.
Okay, you're in.